Grab your bag, we're leaving. Do not look back and for God's sake keep smiling. My husband's voice was a razor-thin whisper against my ear, but the look in his eyes chilled me to the bone. I thought he was just being dramatic about my family's typical dysfunction until he dead-bolted the car doors and looked at me with a face as pale as a ghost. Victoria, that man in the wheelchair, that isn't your grandfather. 5 minutes later, I was dialing 911, my hands shaking so hard I could barely hit the buttons. Most of these people I hadn't seen in 5 years. Some I was pretty sure I'd never met in my life. Someone handed me a plastic cup of cheap champagne. A kid ran past, holding a paper plate like a steering wheel. There were folding chairs, paper lanterns, and soft music drifting from a Bluetooth speaker, all the ingredients of a relaxed backyard party in a quiet Ohio suburb. It should have been beautiful. For the first hour, it was. I stood by the buffet table, pretending to be fascinated by the fruit skewers. My husband, Mark, stood beside me, holding a glass of white wine and scanning the crowd with that neutral, unreadable look he wears when he's being too polite to say he wants to leave. Mom was in her element, hugging guests and dabbing at her lipstick behind a napkin. Dad was by the grill, complaining about the humidity as if the weather had personally insulted him. My sister, Sarah, was predictably keeping her distance. Her husband was laughing at a joke no one else found funny. This was Grandpa's house, but it didn't feel like him anymore. He'd built this place after his business took off, nothing gaudy, just big enough that the neighbors whispered about how well he'd done for himself. Now they all lived here. Mom, Dad, Sarah, and her husband. There was plenty of room, after all. Mark and I had flown in from Chicago the day before. For years, I'd asked when we could visit, and the answer was always a vague brush-off. It's not a good time. He's not feeling well. Maybe next year. Then, this spring, Mom finally cracked. If you really want to see him, come for his 90th. I jumped at the chance. I thought she was softening. I thought this meant something. The party was in full swing when they wheeled Grandpa out. His hair was neatly brushed, and he was wearing a cardigan that looked vaguely familiar. Everyone clapped like he was walking a red carpet. I stood there, frozen. He looked good, too good. His face was smooth, his eyes distant, as if he were listening to a song no one else could hear. I waved. He didn't wave back. I told myself it was just old age. Mom leaned in and whispered, "He doesn't talk much anymore, it's hard for him." I nodded like I understood. She raised her glass and began her speech, her voice trembling just enough to make the entire moment about her. 90 years of wisdom, love, and generosity, she said. He built this family. He gave us this life. A few guests sniffled. A woman behind me murmured, "So beautiful." Mark didn't clap. I noticed he was staring hard. "Hey," I whispered, nudging him. "What's wrong?" He didn't answer. He just kept staring at the man in the chair, as if he were memorizing every wrinkle. "Mark," I said again. That's when he leaned in. "Get your bag. We're leaving. Act like nothing's wrong." I actually laughed. "Are you serious?" He didn't smile. His eyes didn't move. "Get your bag. Go inside. Pack right now. Do not make a scene." "Mark, what is this? We just got here." He slowly turned his head and finally looked at me. "Something is very, very wrong here." It wasn't just what he said, it was how calm he was. It was a cold, hard fact. My hands went ice cold. I looked back at Grandpa. He hadn't moved. His hands rested on the armrests like stage props. "Are you for real?" I asked. Mark didn't answer. He was already walking toward the house. I followed him upstairs, my heart hammering against my ribs. I struggled with the zipper on my suitcase, my mouth bone dry. I kept thinking, if he's wrong, this is going to be so embarrassing, but if he's right. We walked out the front door. No one stopped us. No one even looked up. At the car, Mark opened the passenger door for me like a gentleman in a spy movie. We both got in. He locked the doors. Then he gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white and said, "That is not your grandfather." I used to think I was just sensitive. I'd spent years telling myself I was being dramatic about the way my parents treated me compared to Sarah. I told myself that until the day Sarah turned 18. The whole house acted like she was boarding the Titanic. Mom cried as if someone had died, begging her to stay. "We can make it work. Please just stay a little longer." 2 years earlier, when I turned 18, I got a suitcase and a nod. "Time to grow up," Dad had said. "You're an adult now, go build your life." No hugs, no tears. I don't want to sound bitter. I moved out. I went to college. I made it work. But when you're ushered out the door like a polite guest while your sister is begged to stay, it leaves a mark. Grandpa was the only one who helped. He'd send me money every few months, just enough to survive. Rent, groceries, the occasional breakdown. No fuss, no lectures, just a folded check and a note in his shaky handwriting. "Hope this helps. Proud of you." He didn't owe me that, but he did it anyway. He was my favorite person. Before I could even form sentences, I had Grandpa. He lift me up and tell me stories that sounded like secrets. He smelled like cedarwood and peppermint tea. Back then, it felt like I was his favorite too. But life is good at pulling people apart. College turned into a career. The career led to Mark. Suddenly, we were living in Chicago. The distance made it easier to ignore how rarely my parents called, easier to pretend the silence was just about time zones. The last time I actually spoke to Grandpa was a Zoom call 3 years ago. He looked older but sharp. He made a joke about squirrels stealing his tomatoes. After that, it went quiet. Mom would say he was sleeping or tired. Eventually, she stopped answering altogether. Until the invitation. Come to his 90th. We sat in the car, feeling like we'd just committed a crime or escaped one. "What do you mean it's not him?" I asked. "Victoria, I don't forget faces. I can draw a person I saw at a train station in 2009. That man's ears are a different shape. His bone structure is wrong. It's not Joe." My stomach turned to water. "Then who is it?" Mark looked back at the house. "Your Uncle Leo. You said he looked just like your grandfather when he was younger." "Leo wasn't at the party," I whispered. "Oh my God, he was wearing glasses and a beard, probably makeup. It wasn't over the top, just enough to blur the details." "I know what I saw," Mark said firmly. I pressed my forehead against the window. My heart was thudding so hard it felt like it was punching a hole in my chest. I wanted to believe he was wrong. I wanted to go back to being the disappointing daughter at a weird party. That felt safe. "Where is he then?" I asked. "Where is Grandpa?" Suddenly, everything clicked. The awkward speeches, the half-empty guest list, the way they blocked me every time I tried to get close to the chair. "I haven't spoken to him in 3 years," I said out loud. "Every time I called, Mom said he was resting. Mark, I think I've been screaming into a void for 3 years." "Call the police," Mark said. I hesitated. "I'll ruin everything, my whole family." "Victoria," he said softly, "you aren't the one who did this." I dialed. The police arrived quietly. 2 officers in plain clothes. I told them everything, trying to sound rational while describing a plot that sounded like a cheap thriller. They nodded and walked toward the house like they were delivering a package. The party didn't stop immediately, it just dimmed. People held their glasses, but their eyes started darting. I watched an officer speak to my mother. Her face went rigid. She started gesturing wildly, shaking her head. Her mouth was moving fast, but she didn't touch anyone, not even Dad. Then they spoke to the man in the wheelchair. They asked for ID. Mom went inside and came back with a stack of papers. The officers remained unshakable. Finally, the man in the chair looked up, said a few words, and simply nodded. An officer walked back to our car. "Can you stay close? We'll be in touch." "Is it him?" I asked. "Is it my grandfather?" He didn't answer directly. "We're sorting it out. Stay at your hotel." That night, my phone exploded. It was Mom. "How could you?" she screamed. "You set the police on your own family. You think you're better than us. You weren't here. You didn't see how it was. We did what we had to do for him, for all of us." "What did you do?" I yelled back. "Where is he?" "You have no right to ask, not after this." Click. The next morning, the police knocked on our hotel room door. They told me my grandfather had been dead for 3 years. They said it was natural causes, according to the family's statement. He'd passed away in his sleep back in March of 2023. They had buried him privately on the estate. No funeral, no death certificate, no one told. I sat down because my legs simply stopped working. 3 years. I had sent birthday cards to a ghost. I had worried if he was mad at me. I had wondered if I'd done something wrong, and all that time he was gone. The news leaked a few days later. A shaky cell phone video of the 90th birthday went viral. The internet did what it does. It mocked us. Then it tore us apart. I was called everything from a co-conspirator to a narcissistic brat who should have let her family mourn in peace. Then came the call from Grandpa's lawyer. "Victoria, I've been trying to reach you. Your grandfather left you everything. The house, the business assets, the entire trust. Everything." The room went silent. "This wasn't a secret," the lawyer added gently. "He told your mother and sister years ago." The final piece of the puzzle fell into place. The lies, the body double, the fake party, it wasn't about protecting me. It was about the money. If Grandpa was dead, the house was mine. If I didn't know he was dead, they could keep living his life on my dime. I called my mother one last time. "You didn't protect him," I said, my voice cold and steady. "You looted him." "You weren't there," she shrieked. "You left. You gave up on this family, and now you show up and play the hero." "Where is he, Mom?" "He wanted peace," she spat. I laughed. It was a bitter, broken sound. "He wanted peace, and you gave him a masquerade ball with a stunt double. You're done." The investigation moved fast after that. Charges were filed: failure to report a death, illegal access to funds, and identity fraud. They didn't get prison time. They got heavy probation and massive fines. Uncle Leo, the actor, cooperated with the cops to save his own skin. And I got the house. The court ordered them out. They moved in silence, no apologies, no eye contact. On the final day, I found a note on the kitchen island in my mother's handwriting. "You were always good at taking what you didn't deserve." I burned it in the sink. That first night alone in the house, I sat in Grandpa's old leather chair. I opened a bottle of wine and put my feet up. The house was quiet, smelling of cedarwood and old memories. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt released. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the outsider. I was home. And the people who had made me feel like a stranger for 30 years were finally, permanently, gone.